Victoria Barley. I'm a member of the West Pasco Board of Realtors, and this is our home of which you're sitting. And I will tell you, it is so delightful to see you all here. We have such a marvelous city, wonderful people, so many willing to serve. We're very, very fortunate. On behalf of the West Pasco Board of Realtors, we welcome you. I'm trying to find my friend in the back. Carol Kennard is also on the Board of Realtors. Thank you, Carol, for being of door service. At this time, I'd like to introduce the chairman of the West Pasco Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Derek Pontlitz, who's putting on this event this evening. Derek?
So for those of you that were here for the Port Richey City Debates and got to hear me welcome you that time, lucky you, you get to hear me again. Again, my name's Derek Pontlitz. I'm a proud business owner, financial planner in the downtown city of Newport Richey, beautiful Newport Richey, and also this year the chairman of the board of the West Pasco Chamber of Commerce. We are proud to be hosting this event tonight. It's a part of our public policy committee, which is a division, a standing committee of our West Pasco Chamber of Commerce, where we advocate and take action on behalf of our members and the community as a whole. And we're proud to sponsor tonight and proud to put this on so that we can provide a forum for these excellent candidates for City Council of Newport Richey. So again, thank you for coming out, and without further ado, I'm going to welcome Mr. Bruce Mills, who sits on our Public Policy Committee. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'd like to thank the West Pasco Board of Realtors for the beautiful facility and for letting us be here also. Tonight we're going to have a debate. There are 7 candidates running. We have 6 of them here. They're all seated up here alphabetically. And the questions are going to be from C.T. Bowen, who will be our moderator, and he's been writing about the people and politics of Pasco County for 30 years. So thank you, C.T., for coming. And our timer is going to be Cynthia Armstrong, who is the chairman of the School Board of Pasco County. And also, this is being live streamed on WeBeamTV.com. That's WeBeamTV.com, and you can also go back and look at it later on, I believe. The format is going to be, they're going to have a 3-minute opening statement for each one, and then CT will start asking questions, and they'll have 2 minutes to answer a piece. Because we have so many candidates, we're not going to have a rebuttal time, so each one will just have 2 minutes. If there is something they wanted to address that another candidate said, they can do it on their next 2-minute period. And then at the end, they will each have a 2-minute closing statement. On the opening statements, we're just going to do it alphabetically, starting with Peter Altman and going this way. When we have the questions, CT is going to pull out a name, so we don't really know what order they're going to be in, but each candidate will then follow in the same alphabetical order. So if they call up Joan Hook, she'll answer it first, and then it'll go in alphabetical order the rest of the way around until we're done. And then at the end, we'll have the closing statement, and we'll start at this end of the table and move back in the opposite direction that we've been going the whole time. There's a timer up here, the official ServPro timer, that they'll have a green light. When they get down to 30 seconds, they have a yellow light. And when they get to 15 seconds, Cynthia will hold up a little paddle that says time 15 seconds. And then it'll be the red light, and we'll ding the bell. And our candidates are Peter Altman and Marilyn Deschamps. And we have Joan Hook and Matthew Murphy and Rob Oben and Bob Smallwood. And I'm not going to tell you anything about it because that's what their job is in their first 3 minutes. And with that, Peter Altman.
Yes, my name is Peter Altman, and I am number 6 out of 7 of the Altman family. My father, James Altman, and my mother moved here in the 1950s, and I happen to be living in the house that they brought me home from the hospital to, which is maybe kind of a theme for me today, the cycling of life, and here I find myself back in front of you asking for your vote for City Council. I also want to thank the Board of Realty and also for the Chamber for putting this event on. And I must say that I'm really impressed to see the number of people that are here to listen to what we have to say today. I am not here out of anger or in a sense of going to battle with these candidates. In fact, the top 2 vote getters of us will get in. So in a sense, we're all kind of in this together. But I think I should also reference that the kind of city we have, that we have the 2 outgoing city council members who are here today, Bill Phillips and Judy DeBella Thomas, and I think they deserve a round of applause for the service they've given to the city. When I came home from the hospital, there were only 25,000 people in the whole county. Most of them were in Dade City and on the other side of the county. And so my lifetime here has been one of watching people of all kind of diverse backgrounds move into the city and watching the growth. And I think that gives me a unique perspective, having been here. I served 7 terms in the city in the past as mayor for 3 of those terms. And then I went to work in the community development district business. And the CDDs in Florida are sort of miniature cities. They're small cities. They don't have the police powers or land use and zoning powers, but they have taxing powers. And they have supervisors that are elected by the public once the developers get through them. So this has been my life, working towards the redevelopment of our city, the future of our city. And I found this to be an opportunity for me to come back and share some of the knowledge that I have gained over the years. I hope that you'll find that I bring a unique and different perspective. I was a CPA for 18 years as well, and in that capacity, I also served as the city's finance director for a year and also as an assistant to the city manager for a year. So I've seen it from both sides of the dais, and I'm coming around the track, and hope that you'll give me an opportunity to get back behind the desk and do the job from there. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marilyn Deschamps, and I thank the Chamber and the Realtors, the Board of Realtors, for this opportunity to share a little background information about myself and my years in Newport Richey. I saw Newport Richey for the first time in the mid-'70s, and I thought it a very pretty little town, a town of a time when. Years went by, and I eventually moved to Newport Richey in 1980 as a resident. In 1985, my husband Dell and I had our first experience with the government of Newport Richey after we watched several beautiful long-leaf pine trees being torn down, cut down for new development, and we wondered if the city had a tree ordinance. That incident led to Dell serving on council from 1988 to 1993 and establishing a much stronger tree ordinance, eventually leading our city to being named a Tree City USA, which has been remained a Tree City USA and celebrates Arbor Day for 29 years now. In the mid-1980s, I became involved in the Downtown Revitalization Program, and I worked for 1 year as a volunteer with the Newport Richey Community Cooperative to begin its quest for the city to become named a Florida Main Street city. And that finally took place after 3 tries in 1990. And during this time, I was hired by the cooperative and continued to serve them for another 10 years. Eventually, I also served on the council. And during that time, when I was serving on council, it also started my own PR business. That business has allowed me to work with many of the businesses in Newport Richey and beyond, but most importantly, with not-for-profit organizations. These days, I no longer work on growing my business, but remain involved with local not-for-profits to share their good news and good work and their event information with the community and the entire region. Some of these not-for-profits include Pasco Fiesta, the Sumatoma Foundation, West Pasco Habitat, and the Loquat Festival, to name just a few. I also served in city council in the mid-2000s and learned very much about how the city operates, and also during that time, and with more years of experience and accumulated knowledge, I want to bring these strengths back to city council and to serve once again as an effective, positive, and committed council member. And I appreciate the support of the voters of the city and make a promise to serve to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Joan Nelson Hook, and I've been asked to tell you about myself, and I'd like to tell you about myself because I haven't run for office since 9th grade, and I'm a little inexperienced running for office. So, I was born in Tacoma Park, Maryland. I went to the University of Maryland and received a degree in education. Then to American University in Washington, D.C., and I got a degree in educational administration and supervision. I received my law degree from Delaware Law School at Widener University in Wilmington, Delaware. I've lived in the D.C. area, in the Caribbean, and in Europe. And I must say, I find Newport Richey to be the greatest city to live in. Since moving to Newport Richey in 1993, I've contributed much time to the many volunteer philanthropic organizations in our community. I've served in leadership roles in the Center for Independence, the American Heart Association, the West Pasco Bar Association, the Lighthouse for the Visually Impaired and Blind, the Florida State Guardianship Association, the Rotary Club of Seven Springs, the Academy of Florida Elder Law Attorneys, Ethics Advisory Committee, Bayonet Point Regional Hospital, the Board of Trustees of North Bay Hospital, Gulfside Hospice, and Pasco Palliative Care. I'm a lifetime member of the Newport Richey Historical Society and the Friends of the Newport Richey Library. Currently, I serve as president of the Newport Richey Library Advisory Board. However, my crowning achievement was being crowned Queen Pasco of 2006. I built my law practice in Newport Richey, and this year it celebrates its 25th anniversary. My son David is here in the audience, and he joined me in the practice 12 years ago. If I'm elected to the City Council, I'm going to bring my common sense, my analytical skills, and my energy to tackle the challenges facing Newport Richey as we learn from the past and look to the future. Thank you so much.
Hello, I also want to thank the Chamber and also the Board of Realtors for putting this on. It's really great to see so many people out here because it's a very important thing when you're electing your leaders for the city. I've been to many forums, and there's more here than I've seen at some state representative forums, county commissions, so it's really encouraging, definitely. A little bit myself, I'm Matt Murphy. I'm a local business owner here in Pasco County. I own Farrell Power Company, which by trade I'm an electrical contractor. Before that, I worked for a national company building infrastructure across the United States for counties, municipalities, on the electrical side, engineering and just putting it all together. Before that, I was in the military. I spent 7.5 years on civil engineering, working on electrical systems, renovating, work on infrastructure for bases in support of Desert Storm, Desert Shield. So I gained a lot of knowledge there right from the beginning. Before that, I grew up right here in Pasco, right here in Newport Richey. Graduated from Gulf High School, class of '88, so that's quite a few years ago, but it's still a great town. I've seen it grow, I've seen it change, and one thing I can say about Newport Richey, it's always been in my heart. Nothing I can remember as a childhood didn't revolve around Newport Richey, whether it's Chasco Fiesta, the boat parade, that's probably one of the biggest things we'd always, growing up, having that as a kid. In my past years, I've had to travel a lot, so I haven't had a chance to really get too involved locally because I'd be gone during the week. But now being back for the past, 4 or 5 years in the community, in the business, I really want to, take charge and work on some things. We have such a great city, so many great things happening in this city. Probably the best time that I've ever seen since I've been here. Whether it's Main Street Landing finally getting back on track. Downtown businesses, people, fighting to get in, redevelopment. We have the apartments going in on Orange Lake. So many good things happening. We have our old businesses that have been here forever and stood that test of time. Boulevard Beef and Ale, places like that. Fitzgerald's, those places that have just been here a long time. We have so many great things downtown, and my biggest thing is, we want to make sure we see everything to fruition. Make sure that we take this good time and run with it and are able to make it happen in the future. Not to say we don't have our issues, as like any city does, with crime and our neighborhoods and things we need to work on, but that's all part of being in city, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I'd like to start by thanking the West Pasco Chamber of Commerce, the West Pasco Board of Realtors, and everybody involved in coordinating today's debate. I'd also like to thank everyone for joining us here on a Monday evening, because everybody always usually has something a little bit better to do. My name is Rob Oman. I've lived within our beautiful city limits for 7 years now, and I did just recently celebrate my 36th birthday. I graduated Countryside High School all the way back in 2000. Yes, I'm a millennial. And attending a year of college at Ole Miss, I returned to Florida and began working in customer service for a national telecommunications company. I worked my way up to management within a year and was directly responsible for 12 to 18 reps who were taking anywhere from 70 to 110 calls per day each. While working there, I studied in the evening and acquired my Florida real estate license, where I later became a member of the West Pasco Board of Realtors. Unfortunately, the timing was not great. I did try to do that during the recession, and after countless months of not being able to earn any income, I did jump back into blue-collar work. So with the recession in full swing, I did anything I could to make money. These things included installing lightning rods. I did laminate floors, wood floors. I painted many, many houses in Pinellas County. Until I took a fall off a ladder. So once I did that, I went ahead and jumped back into white-collar business. So the last 7 years, I've been now managing a pest control company here in Newport Richey, just outside the city limits. So I'm now responsible for just 12 employees, responsible for all the scheduling, the routing, customer service, appointment setting, as well as verifying all the paper and contracts are all done correctly. Pretty much all the basic, making sure all the day-to-day operations are done. I'm running for city council because I do love living in Newport Richey. I want to see it flourish in the city I know it can definitely become. I purchased a home downtown, and I hope to spend many, many more years here. Like when I ran in 2016, I still think we need to connect some of our parks and recreation center with biking and running trails. It's among the top 5 things new homeowners are looking for when purchasing a new home, and we definitely need to bring that here. I would like to see us come up with more efficient ways of removing yard and landscaping debris. There shouldn't be piles of debris the size of a car scattered among the city for 6 to 8 weeks, depending on when it's put out. I'd also like to see 1 or 2 companies collecting trash on the same 2 days of the week. It shouldn't be trash day, Monday through Friday, with 6 to 8 large trucks repeatedly going through our neighborhood streets. I think the city can definitely find a better way of resolving undesirable issues in the city other than creating ordinances. I think many ordinances have been outdated, unnecessary, or even not enforced evenly among the community. I think it's time we focus on our neighborhood streets, correcting storm drainage to prevent future flooding, and also damage to the streets, and promoting all the amazing things that the city has to offer. Doing these things, I think, will promote further homeownership in Newport Richey and support all the businesses within the city. Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Bob Smallwood. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I'm sure everybody has noticed the tremendous growth and strides within Newport Richey over the last 4 or 5 years. Sims Park our restaurants, a wine bar, tea room, ice cream and shaved ice stores, cupcake shops, other new retail. Soon we'll be adding a health food market, and within a year and a little bit more, we'll be having significant downtown residential units coming in. We also are engaged with an experienced hotel developer for the Hacienda. And in just a few days, we'll be on the Tampa Bay microbrewery map. Yay. Which is a big deal, because I know there's a lot of people go and take tours through microbreweries. So, but these are all great steps, but they will be squandered without the right leadership on council. This election is not only about the future of our city, it's about now. What are we going to do to take the right steps to maintain and build on our successes? I'm running for city council because I love this city. I want to be part of the leadership team accelerating our momentum forward. I want to continue to give back to the community, to utilize my business skills, knowledge, and personal relationships I have built to create a vision for our future. I grew up in Safety Harbor, graduated from Dunedin High School, went to USF, got a degree in electrical engineering, and then later on received my master's in business administration from FIT. After college, went and worked for over 30 years for several Fortune 100 companies in sales engineering, marketing, system and business development of multi-million-dollar electronic test systems, both nationally and internationally. In 2005, my wife Kelly and I decided it was time to move back home. We chose Newport Richey. We immediately fell in love with everything about the city and everything it had to offer. I've been married 38 years. We have 2 adult children, 5 beautiful grandkids, and a boxer dog named Molly. My wife's a special education teacher at Anclote High. I left corporate America to work as a commercial real estate agent focusing on West Pasco. I have taken on leadership roles, been involved in many boards and organizations in our city and our downtown, and have volunteered for the U.S. Coast Guard for over 10 years. I was a driving force for the recent Public Art Crosswalk project. I spearheaded the return of the Cody Man Triathlon. I lead tour groups to the Hacienda and volunteer at most downtown events. I'm currently on the Newport Richey Land Development Board. I attend or watch every council meeting or workshop. And I engage regularly with current council members, our mayor, and most city departments. I'm not a politician. I'm not always politically correct, and I'm definitely not someone that sits on my hands and be quiet. Thank you for your time.
The first question goes to Joan Hook.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Wait till I ask. Okay. Please indulge me. The biggest public debate nationally is over gun control. Shortly after the slaying of 17 people in Parkland, a Hillsborough County commissioner proposed banning assault-style firearm sales in Hillsborough and requiring a background check at firearm shows, that so-called gun show loophole. Regardless of that state law that says local governments can't do anything, if you are elected to city council, what do you view as your role in this national debate, and do you believe local rules should be instituted?
Well, that's a very difficult question, because I was under the impression that Florida Statute 790, the Carlucci statute, forbid elected municipal or elected candidates from discussing.
I don't believe it takes away your First Amendment rights, ma'am.
I think it does. But I don't know that, as a city council member, I really am not prepared to answer that, because it was my understanding that the 790 forbid council members or any elected officials from discussing gun regulations that would be more strict than what the legislature has passed. So this is not my area of the law, but that's my understanding of the law. If I were allowed to talk about it, I would support background checks for people and maybe a waiting period. My husband had guns, my son has guns, my brothers have guns, but they keep them safe and they're responsible people. They've all had training, either in the military or through volunteer organizations. But I think we just need to use some common sense and keep guns away from people who shouldn't have them by making sure that people know how to use guns safely. So, thank goodness my time is up. Thank you.
Well, very, very important topic and very engaging topic right now, especially in our time in this country. I definitely support background checks. Think we need to be more thorough with our background checks. We have to do more for our mental illness for people, mental health. Make sure that we are screening people properly. I don't for any second say that, no, someone should not have a gun. It's their First Amendment or Second Amendment right. But I think we do need to make sure, as a society, we make sure we're not giving them to people that really shouldn't have them. And how we set up a system to evaluate, that's definitely above my level. But we definitely need the background checks and screenings to make sure. Being in the military, we're trained to use type weapons. From day one, you're taught, you're training, and from my experience anyways in the military is you went out, you practiced, you trained, and then they took them from you and locked them up until you need them. It wasn't something it wasn't a toy. It was something you used for your job in the military. And I think one of the biggest problems we have is we got a lot of young people and people who are not mature enough or not had the training, and they don't understand the consequences of what they do with the weapons and treat it as a game or as a toy. And so, I fully support waiting till 21 if you need to get an assault rifle or something, or a gun in period. You can't have a drink, but we can give you an assault rifle. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to impede anybody, but I think we definitely need to make sure that certain people we're screening people properly for this type of stuff. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question again?
Sure. I'll cut to the chase. Shortly after the shootings in Parkland, Hillsborough County Commissioner proposed banning assault-style firearm sales in Hillsborough and requiring background checks at firearm shows, so-called gun show loophole. If you're elected to the City Council, what do you view as your role in this national debate, and do you believe local rules should be instituted? And I ask you to consider that regardless of what the state says.
All right, so Hillsborough County did put in this proposed ban. The thing I think everybody keeps getting involved in is the difference between assault weapons and assault rifles. There keeps being a debate on what's getting banned, what's getting not banned, what's what, and the definitions of each. I think everybody up here is in agreement that weapons are very serious things. They are tools to certain people, used for certain things, but certain people shouldn't be able to get them. It shouldn't be easier to get a gun than a can of spray paint from Walmart. I mean, if you're 18 and you go and try to get spray paint, they're going to card you. If you go to Walgreens or CVS and you're trying to get Sudafed, you're going to get an ID and you're going to write your name down. And if you go and try and do that at multiple places, they're going to keep track of you, and the government's going to come and ask you why you're buying multiple Sudafed. Sudafed doesn't kill people in the wrong hands. So I think we definitely need to take steps to allow the legislature and other governments to provide the proper background checks and the proper mental health and stuff like that. As far as the city, I don't know much more that we can do other than we've got police units that sit at the schools within our city limits. I think we can definitely do some more of that, maybe offer extra deputies when available to do their paperwork near the schools or in the schools facility, just to prevent anybody from showing up at random. But as a local government, all we really can do is hopefully lead the way that we want our legislatures and other state governments to do. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic that I didn't really think would come up here, but I'd be happy to address it. So, and I think we all would probably agree, they haven't spoken yet, but there's mental health issues. I'm pretty much in favor of raising the age of the guns up to 21. But from a city standpoint, I'm going to sit down with Chief Bogard and understand from his perspective what we need to do to control guns within the city. If it is a problem, and if it is, work together with him and the other city council members to come up with a plan. I think we have 4 public schools in the city. I'm not sure how many private schools. So I know it's an issue and concern. I know you can't harden all the schools, and you can't put metal detectors in all of them. So again, my main thing I would want to do is sit down with our local police force, with Chief Bogard, really understand what his concerns, what we can do as a city and as a city council to help alleviate and provide him the tools and resources necessary to carry out any of those plans. Thank you.
Mr. Bowen, I was chairman of the county commission on that fateful 9/11 day, and you may recall some of the brouhaha that was local that resulted from that discussion I had at that meeting. We had just bought all of these voting machines that were touch screen voting machines and spent millions of dollars on them. I watched, as everyone else did, that incredible event. And there are events that we have in our life that I can remember. I remember barely the little Kennedy boy when Mr. Kennedy was shot. I remember the wall coming down, the Berlin Wall coming down. We all remember 9/11. I also watched the TV Thursday and watched these children come and talk to the country about their desires. And they're quite reasonable in the sense that they are not trying to think that they can just make all guns go away. I lost my 17-year-old grandson to a self-inflicted bullet to his head a couple years ago. That's tough. Children aren't mature enough, and their brains have not matured enough, given access to guns, in my mind. Hunting, supervised parent, I went hunting with him. He knew gun safety, but he didn't know self-control, and he hadn't developed his mind. So it's amazing to me that the children are asking for their own people not to have guns. We all worry that if somebody has a gun, we don't want to be outgunned. But the guns, we just have too much firepower in our world right now. And I would do anything I could to control that. Thank you.
It's an interesting question. I support the age limit to be moved up to 21. I think bump stocks be outlawed. I think that we need to consider the need for something like an assault rifle or gun in a domestic society, and whether that really has a purpose with all the residents and human beings. I also believe that mental issues need to be considered, and I also think it's extremely important to keep this conversation going, because we individuals may have our own thoughts. I personally think we need tougher rules for guns, but keep the conversation going so we can help bring this issue to a point where we are not seeing so many young people die. Thank you.
Mr. Roman. The funding of downtown Main Street, Newport Richey, has been a near annual debate. How do you view that group's role, and should the city continue to fund it?
That is a good one. I think that the city should fund it to a certain point. I think that, like most things in life, we need to be able to set goals and set measurable goals, and then measure and see whether or not we're living up to those goals. I don't think we should keep on throwing money into something that doesn't work. So as long as we can keep on making sure that Main Street is providing to the city and working hand in hand and actually providing a benefit to the city, then I think certainly we can continue to fund that. If it's something that is not working out for the city and we're just dumping money into it, then we need to look for other avenues to provide what we're looking to get out of the group. As long as they're providing a benefit to the city, it should be funded. If it's not providing a benefit, then certainly not.
The Main Street program, I guess I know a little bit about it. I was the president of the board a few years back. And the Main Street program, I don't know how many of you really understand the Main Street program. There's 4 main legs to the program. There's events, which the Main Street program here seems to do really well. There's a design aspect that deals with facades and public art, which we just did crosswalks, so we're connecting on that. And there was a new bicycle rack installed in front of Christina's. There is also an organization part that deals with the downtown businesses, as well as just membership in general. Honestly, the program hasn't done well. The city took over the role of hiring and managing our director of the program a couple years ago. Since that time that we went through 2 directors, one only lasted a month and a half, and the other just wasn't a good fit. So this program really took a downward spiral. And it's at the point now where it's probably at the bottom. It needs to be rebuilt back up. It's a great program. It focuses on historic downtown, small cities like what ours is. It helps bring in grant money for things like the Hacienda hotels and such. To answer your question, there should be a set of deliverables that are established by City Council for the Main Street program. And their funding is based on meeting those deliverables each quarter, which I think is the way it's set up right now. I believe they met their deliverables for the first quarter. I'm not sure where the program is on the second quarter because I'm not as involved with the program this year as I had in the past. But bottom line is you set up firm, hard deliverables, and you pay and you give them funds based on meeting the performance of those deliverables.
The short answer is yes. I think they should continue to fund, to some degree, an agency whose purpose is to accomplish the goals of the city and the city CRA. The city's Main Street program is meant for small cities, and Newport Richey is a small city. I think the unique thing about our city, other than the fact we're the largest county that's a non-chartered county, which means that our city has its own destiny in its hands, and it has this large CRA entity, is that we are the downtown for 150,000 people. And that Pasco Fiesta, or our library, or our rec center, our streets, our Highway 19, functions as the downtown for a much larger community. So the CRA is the entity that has funds and has the larger role. And there's a whole other agency in Florida called the Florida Redevelopment Agency that manages larger cities like Miami and Clearwater. I think the small town charm is sustained by the Main Street program, and that, our residents, our business owners get out there. That's one of the most wonderful things, is to go to an event and see the people that you know. To see Thad Lowry, who used to announce the baseball games when I was a little boy playing baseball, to find out if the rain was going to wash out the game, or to see many of you that I know for a long time. But we are, and I think have to recognize, we need to accept our role as West Pasco's downtown and think at that scale, but it doesn't mean that we dismiss the small town part of it. So it's a critical part of who we are, and those are volunteers that we're supporting. And this is not an agency that's an out-of-town agency or a consultant. We pay more money to consultants than we do to our own community folks that are working hard and volunteering. Thank you.
You're asking a question that's very near and dear to my heart. As I mentioned in my intro, I have been a part of downtown since the mid-'80s, and as the first year, I volunteered my time because I just thought it was so unique, and the beauty of the parapets, and the design, the grid, there's so many things could be possible. So back then, we did win that Main Street designation, which then allowed me to get Main Street training for those 4 approaches that Bob mentioned. And with that, we did get city money at the time, grant money. And while the office was basically run by one person, me, I did reach out to get volunteers to help. We built our membership, and that's how we brought in more money. We also had promotions, fundraisers, and the downtown beautification program. We started the incentive program, which has been revitalized by Mario. And so with all that being said, let me just say, the current Main Street situation needs to be refreshened. They need to update their bylaws. They need to pick leadership that will understand that relationship between what that leader does, the executive does for and with the board. And they need to go forward with a plan that works with what the city wants, those deliverables. So, yes, I do believe the city should provide funds for that and make that a solid working relationship. Thank you.
I would have to agree with my friends up here that Main Street is, the Main Street program is going to be very helpful for the city of Newport Richey. It may add another, I'm just concerned that it may add another layer, but if that layer can bring in grant money, then the grant money can certainly help us accomplish some of the things that we're trying to do. I remember Marilyn, that's how I first met her, when she was director of Main Street, and she brought the March on Art. I don't know if you remember that, but that was a fine arts jury festival that was held here. And that really opened a lot of people's eyes that a city like Newport Richey could support such a fine event. I think Judy DeBella Thomas, our current council person, also got contributed to Newport Richey through the Main Street program. So as long as it contributes, and as long as the city council can find a synthesis with it and make it accountable, I think that it's a great program. We'll have to look into it, okay?
I think you'd be hard-pressed for anybody to say that, no, these type programs aren't needed or aren't wanted. I definitely think these programs are needed. It's not always a benefit monetarily, but it's a benefit culturally for our city and for our citizens. And you have to constantly weigh that, the programs that they're putting on, the programs that they're doing, are we getting that benefit from them? Is the cost associated with it getting your best bang for your benefit of your whole city? And I think as long as we keep that in mind, as long as we're getting a true benefit from these programs, then I think, we definitely need to keep it going. I know of late there has been some criticism about the Main Street, and I'm not saying there's not times where may need to revamp things, change things up a little bit, make sure that benefit is realized and you're actually obtaining it. But you do have to look at it from a side as, well, let's not keep pouring money into something that is not working anymore. Let's get it, change it up. Let's fix it. So it does benefit the citizens. So I think we definitely need these programs. We just have to monitor and make sure we are getting that cost benefit ratio correct.
Marilyn DeShawn. Marilyn, the ULI report was extremely complimentary of the city while offering up ideas on bettering neighborhoods. Please give us your top idea on improving the city's neighborhoods.
My top idea would have something to do with creating incentive programs to encourage homeowners and even landlords to make necessary changes to the structures and clean up the property so that we can start seeing property values change, as in going up. Back in 2001, we had a consultant, this is before I was on council, but there was a consultant who came in and divided our city up into 19 different neighborhoods. I thought that was pretty exciting. And there was a time when some of those neighborhoods were focused upon by the council, and they would start doing either cleanup projects or fix things. They did the safety road bumps in some areas, and all of these neighborhoods had named. I thought, and I think now, we should bring that back. I think the more we start to focus on the well-being of our neighborhoods and the property, and working out better working relationships with the land owners, I mean, actually the rental property owners, because after all, we do have 47% rental property in Newport Richey, so we have to really focus on that, develop better working relationships, and in the meantime, also help the residents with possibly those incentive programs and encouraging the cleanup thereof. Thank you.
The question is, what would be my
Your top idea for bettering the city's neighborhoods.
neighborhoods?
Yes.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is fixing the sidewalks in neighborhoods. Newport Richey is supposed to be, the goal of the city council is to make Newport Richey a walkable community. Being able to walk to the store, being able to walk to entertainment, and so many people walk for exercise, and they have to walk in the street because the pavements are broken up either from tree roots or from just age. But I know it sounds like a mundane fix for a top job, but when you mention neighborhoods, a neighborhood, if it's walkable, it's going to be serviceable to the people who live in the neighborhood. So I think having a walkable neighborhood with safe sidewalks is important for a quality of life if we're trying to improve the quality of life of our neighborhoods. I think that parking, it would be my next problem help to solve. People have talked about parking garages, and when that is mentioned, it brings to my mind a huge concrete 4-story edifice. And I think we need to look at some other ideas for solving our parking problems. And I have some, like thinking of little parking, pocket parking plans, where you have a few, maybe 50 cars, and that's all. But I'll talk to you more about that later, because my time is up. Thank you.
I wish there was one simple solution to neighborhood and revitalization, but I think one of the big key components is infrastructure. A little bit what Joan was talking about is our sidewalks, our roads. Everything starts with our infrastructure in a city or anywhere. That's where you build from, make sure everything's taken care of. The other is the ratio we have renters to owners, nearly half. That's not good for any city. We want people to be owners. We want people to invest in their home, in their community. And renters don't always do that, not saying they don't. But if we want them to really be engaged and part of the community, we want them to be owners. So whatever we can do to get people to invest and buy, I even want to say that, offer incentives to the landlords to sell, and get owners in there, get people to buy the homes and grandfather in where you can't rent it out for 1-2 years. Let's make sure that people are buying to live there, to be part of the community, put roots in there. And I think that's one of the biggest things we have to do. We want that home ownership. We want people to take ownership and be involved. And that's one of the biggest things, one of the hardest things we're gonna have before us in the years ahead. Not saying there's anything against renters or anything like that, but we definitely want people to take that home ownership and be involved, and that just benefits the whole community. Thank you.
All right, I'd just like to mention, the report you're referring to was one of many numerous reports that the city receives from time to time, basically telling us that we have an amazing city that nobody tells us about, or that nobody knows about. It's true, we've got many, many waterfront parks, almost 7. We've got kayak launches. Nobody seems to know about them, though. What I would really like to do, as I said earlier, one of the top 5 things new homeowners want is bike and running trails. I'm a young guy. I run, I bike, I kayak, I do all these things. This is true, though, with millennials and baby boomers alike. One of the top 5 things is really bike trails. I really think we need to take advantage of all the amazing parks and water frontage that we have in Newport Richey. It wouldn't be difficult. We do have some of the structure already in place. We've already got a wonderful trail going from Sims Park all the way up the river, all the way up to Massachusetts. The park, it then goes from Massachusetts up to the Recreation Center. We can run that further from the Recreation Center down, all the way down to Francis Park, run it over to Grand, run it from Grand Park all the way back up to Sims Park, and then you have a 3.2-mile loop where everybody in the community can go either east or west, hit that path, and be brought into downtown, be brought to one of our parks, be brought to the rec center. Hopefully in the future we could extend that, bring that all the way up to Port Richey, up to Gildog, bring it all the way to the beaches. We really need to bring these things into the city. I mean, that would I think do a lot of things for the homeownership. And that, just like everybody else said, the rental rates are too high, so if we could do more grants for homeownership, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, I definitely agree with all the infrastructure comments. I know we're in the process of paving roads, there's new road assessment fees, so we just got to make sure that stays intact. I agree with Joan, there's some sidewalks that need fixing, there's sidewalks that don't exist that need to exist. But getting back to the housing aspect, the Urban Land Institute came up with a lot of great ideas, going from taking some of the old dilapidated mobile home parks, how to take care, or how to convert those into new residential units. One idea is also to put the CRA back to work in our neighborhoods, going back to some community improvement grants and lien forgiveness grants that I know existed at one time. If a new home buyer a house, there's some existing liens on the house, there could be a program where the city would forgive some of those liens. I know my wife and I have a niece that's actually trying to buy a house in Newport Richey in the $110,000 price range. You just can't do it. She's got to get financing, and by that time, when those prices come up on a house, or those houses come up on the market, there's somebody with cash ready to gobble those things up. So we definitely need to come up with some home ownership plans geared at new home ownership, first-time home ownerships. And there could be some state money, there should be some county money, and let's look into our CRA. One other thing, and I like Rob's comment about bike trails too. I created a little bit of a Facebook blog about bike trails, particularly looking at what's going on North River Road, possibly turning that into a one-way street and making a bike lane going from Newport Richey into the Port Richey waterfront. It's a great idea too. But I just want to leave you, the one thing I took out of the Urban Land Institute, there's a quote that they gave. They said, "There is a market waiting to hear the Newport Richey story." We got to market our city. Thank you.
Mr. Bowen, you mentioned a study, man, there've been studies and studies and studies. We had University Tallahassee students here. We had folks from Washington, D.C. here. We've learned a lot about millennials, about the walkable, bikeable, all that stuff is right. Back in the day, we had Edmund Bacon, who was the father of Kevin Bacon, the famous actor, who was a Philadelphia architectural guy about building things that are beautiful to attract people. Another day, we had Fred Kent, who was from the Project for Public Spaces from New York City, who had the idea of dedicating ground space to public space to encourage people to enjoy the space on the ground. And they gave incentives to allow people maybe to go up a little higher, as long as they protected that walkable purpose of having people come together. So there's build it and they will come, or bring the hot dogs and watch them come. And so somehow, the hot dogs didn't work, by the way, but it's a slow process. But for those of you who might remember, my poor wife, I put her to work at a hot dog stand one time coming back from a conference. Bottom line is, the city should show by example. The best thing the city can do is look at the assets we have and actually bring them to their full potential. The alleys in our city are atrocious. The alleys in our city could become those corridors, those walkable corridors. They could be fixed up. We can't expect people to care about what we want them to do unless they know that we care about them. And I think the city has got to show that love to the people in the city and clean up its own spaces. Thank you.
You know, I know you were promised 4 questions, but we're virtually out of time right now, so we're going to go to closings. And I believe, Mr. Smallwood, you start.
Well, thanks. I appreciate everybody's time. It's a great audience. I'm glad everybody came out. Hopefully you get to know a little bit more about each of us as candidates. I appreciate the moderators and the Board of Realtors for hosting this. Just to make it real quick and simple, I've been doing most of my marketing out on Facebook. I got a Facebook page called Bob Smallwood for City Council. And on it, I created a tagline, "It's time." And I was just going to read through some of those as my closing statement here. So, it's time for new faces and energy on City Council. Time to engage citizens to move towards greatness. It's time to shift downtown development into high gear. It's time to get serious about marketing Newport Richey. Again, that follows on what we heard from consultant after the consultant. It's time to work more closely with our businesses and to attract new businesses and higher paying jobs. It's time to develop plans to upgrade our housing and encourage home ownership. And last but not least, it's time to thank our police, fire, and our public safety folks in the city. Thank you for your time.
Again, I'd like to thank everyone for attending or watching online tonight. I'd like to finish by praising everybody up here who is running for city council. Everybody up here does have their own strengths that they would bring, and no matter what the choices of the voters of the city, I think the city will be in good hands. I'd like to provide a little diversity to the new council. I haven't lived in Newport Richey for 2 or 3 decades like many of the people up here that would be elected if I was not. I've seen and lived through other cities and municipalities have operated. I've seen some things that have worked and things that have not worked, and I hope to bring those things here if you choose me. Whoever is selected will have very large shoes to fill with the current council members who are leaving. They have served the city well and ran, and I can only hope that I serve the city with as much determination, effort, and sacrifice that they have given over the last few years. I offer a fresh, young, progressive outlook to anything that will come before me on council. I hope to move the city towards a fresh, green future. I hope to get the city to create bike running trails, as I mentioned many, many times tonight, connecting key parks that are downtown. I'd like to commit the city to 100% renewable energy on all of its city buildings and city parks by hopefully 2050. These are all ambitious things, but to become a great city, we need to shoot for the stars, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work for you. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank everybody for being here, because it is very important to see what's going on in your city government and who you want to pick to help lead. I think you've heard from everybody, and everybody has great ideas and things they want to do, and it all comes down to working together as a community and making sure we're pushing these things forward. Ideas are great unless you can get them implemented and moving forward, and that's something I definitely want to do on the commission. I want to make sure on the city council, I want to make sure that everybody's getting the resources they need to do their job, our police, our firefighters, what we need for our downtown, for our development, for our neighborhoods, everything. You know, unfortunately, it does take money too, so we got to make sure that we're spending our money wisely. We pay a little more taxes here in Newport Richey than our surrounding areas outside the city, and you expect more, and you should. We need to get our best bang for our buck, and it should benefit everyone. And I want to make sure, just be a voice on that, make sure we're carrying things forward to fruition. We got to work with our other cities, Port Richey, our county, our state leaders. I've been fortunate to see behind the scenes in Tallahassee, up with Representative Amanda Murphy, and see how things work. And it's a crazy world up there. Don't get me wrong, it's crazy compared to the city. And we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of any programs or grants or things we can see from the state. We pay taxes. We need to make sure that Tallahassee is looking at us and make sure we're getting funds for projects we need. We've always been kind of the redheaded stepchild in West Pasco. Everything's kind of, all the development's going east, and they kind of forget about us over here. We need to make sure that they're remembering us and things we need also. But again, I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate everybody else running. Everybody's been really great. No bashing, no slinging, nothing like that. So that's always good. And I appreciate it. And if you'd consider me on April 10th, thank you.
I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. It's really delightful to see democracy at work like this. You've taken time from the things that you have to do to come here and listen to us who want to serve you in the city of Newport Richey. Thank you to our moderator and our timekeeper and our host, King Mills. I want to say, of course, I want you to vote for me, but there's some things that haven't been said tonight that I'd like to just touch on. There's a concept that's alive and well in our community called tactical urbanism. If you haven't heard of that, if you heard about the parklet that was on Main Street, on Grand Boulevard, just before Pasco, then you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, tomorrow at 7 o'clock at the City Hall, they're going to be talking about that. But this is a very vibrant movement that may be another tool in our toolbox to fix some city problems. People say we want to be like Dunedin or we want to be like Tarpon Springs. Well, I really don't. We're different. You know what we have? We have something that those cities don't have. We have a river that runs through our town. And our river is such a treasure, and it's such a, I think, underutilized resource to market Newport Richey. So I want to thank the City Council for what they've done. They've left the new members of City Council to be with a very, very exciting program of change and development. And I thank the City Council very much for what they've done and what they've gotten us into for the years ahead. Thank you.
I do want to make a few points in closing. Once again, about the property values. It is my understanding that if we can promote more ownership, or at least better working relationships with the landlords, we can uplift those property values. You know, when you do that, you can revisit your millage. You can lower millage. Your property values go up. Another thing I'd like to see continue, of course, without a doubt, is downtown redevelopment and revitalization. It is the pebble in the pond, and the ripples affect the neighborhoods and beyond. It's a definitely worthy focus for this city. In fact, 30 years ago, when the cooperative got started, I'm very happy to think that we did plant seeds back then that we are seeing come to fruition now. It's true that this is the time for moving forward, but we can move forward based on how we've created that platform, that basis, that strong land and downtown so that it can keep going forward and prosper all of us. We have an excellent city staff. We have excellent leadership. I want to work with them so that we can continue to see this development, this growth, the changes that need to be made, and the difficulties that need to be considered. So with that, I also want to encourage more marketing of our parks and recreation, and also our library. And I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and for listening to us. I do ask for your vote April 10. Thank you very much.
I think the other side put this thing down here to try to... This is not too late for a little rumble. No. I don't know how many of you all watch the Olympics, but I was thinking about when you watch the Olympics, no matter what sport it is, there's that little thing in the little box that shows the winner and at that point in the race where our person is at that point in the race, or our opponent is in that point in the race. And so, you know, one of the things that has been missing that really needs to happen in this city is for us to be monitoring and watching the success as we implement these plans. We have plans everywhere. What we need is to agree on a plan, set ourselves on it, and monitor that we get there. The lack of our ability to complete capital projects in time ends up closing the rec center during the summer when all the kids want to use it. The lack of our ability to stay on a plan is important. And the knowledge that we're on the plan gives us the confidence to move forward. I think that, you know, the city has tools, and they say it's a bad carpenter who blames his tools, but it's a bad carpenter who doesn't know how to use his tools. And it's a bad city council, or it's a bad board that doesn't insist that tools are implemented. We spend millions of dollars on computers that now allow us to monitor and see what's going on. We're all aware of the changes that go on around us right now with the electronics, the knowledge that's occurred, the kids holding up his cell phone and saying, it's all right here, folks. And so we have to be able to stay up with that in the city. But more importantly, we have to stay on track. So we talked about momentum and me coming around again the track, back to the start again to try again. But the train is running, and I think I'm running fast enough to jump right on that train and keep it rolling. I hope that you'll vote for me. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and also thank the Board of Realtors for the facility again, and the West Pasco Chamber of Commerce, who has also done these debates for the county-wide quite a while. This is the first one that we've done for city elections in a long, long time, so I think we'll probably continue it because the crowd that came, it's really great. I'd also like to thank C2 Bowen. Thank you for the wonderful questions. And most of all, I'd like to thank the candidates. I mean, there's 7 candidates, which is a lot of candidates, but I think more than the quantity is just the quality. As I was sitting out in the audience looking up here, and I was thinking just the incredible amount of good that this slate of candidates has done. I mean, it was over the years, if you've gone to events and committees and all kinds of volunteer work, you know, a lot of these people are the ones that have been there for a long, long time. And with that, thank you everybody for coming, and thank you candidates. Thank you.